So, Mr. Ravi, why law?
Well, you know, it's an interesting question. I started out, most South Asians, of course, don't go into law. They usually go into IT or engineering or whatever. But, you know, I suppose it was a bit of my father's influence. My father's an academic. He just got the Order of Canada, which is the highest civilian order you can get. And we would have, anytime I ever wanted anything, I had to make an argument. Why should I get this, that, or the other thing? So then I decided, okay, maybe I should go into philosophy. I studied philosophy at Queen's University, graduated at the top of that program. Then I went into law and studied at Osgoode Hall, which is the oldest Canadian law school. Most lawyers don't have a master's because you've already studied 4 years for your undergraduate generally, and you study 3 years for your law school. But I decided to do a master's of law so that I could learn the U.S. immigration law system at a sort of master's level. And then I came back to Canada and was called to the bar in Canada. And now I practice all aspects of Canadian and U.S. immigration law.
He was honored with an invitation to address the Canadian Senate as an expert witness on immigration law and appeared before the Senate Standing Committee on Human Rights on March 10, 2008. He is certified as a specialist in citizenship and immigration law by the Law Society of Upper Canada.
As far as I know, I'm the only immigration lawyer who has formally studied immigration law in both countries, in both Canada and the United States. I have a master's of law, and I also am the only South Asian lawyer who is designated as a specialist by the Law Society of Upper Canada, which is the body that regulates all lawyers in Ontario, and I am the only certified specialist by that group as a specialist in immigration law. So that's an honor that I was very pleased to achieve because you normally are only eligible after 7 years, and most specialists get it after many years of practice. But I managed to get it right immediately after 7 years of practicing law, so I was very happy with that. Most lawyers become a partner after 7-8 years, but I was able to they asked me to become a partner after 4 years of working here, and the reason is because most associates, it takes a while until they build their own practice, but from the very beginning, I remember the senior partner of my firm coming down and saying he had a group of Indian people behind him, and he said, Ravi, they want to speak to you. And I said, you know, I've just started here. Why do they want to speak to me? But of course, people of South Asian descent, they like to go to people in their own community. They think that they're going to understand the issues, and they think they're going to do a very good job. But I look at it the other way. Lawyers are there to serve the public, and they're not there. If I tell people every day, I can't take your case, there's nothing that can be done, or, you know, and if I take a case, I tell them, you know, I only take cases if I think it can work. And I'm very honest with them. I mean, if they say they want to hire me for this, and it normally costs whatever amount of money, sometimes I'll say, no, the solution is this other way, and it's cheaper for you. So that's the difference between a lawyer and a consultant in my experience.
Mr. Ravi Jain, BA Honours, LL.B, LLM, CS, is certainly one of the few and maybe the only person to have formally studied both Canadian and American immigration law at law schools in each respective country.
People put in lots of trust in the person, you know, who's making their case. According to you, it's better to trust a lawyer than going and throwing money at consultants?
Right now, there is a huge issue with consultants. After many, many years of abuse, all the ethnic communities in Canada have been complaining about consultants, saying that they're ripping them off. They're charging a lot of fees. They're incompetent. They're telling people to claim refugee status. Then the people get deported. They can never come back to Canada. So there's all kinds of problems over the years that have happened with immigration consultants. Finally, a few years ago, the government said, okay, we're going to regulate consultants. We're going to actually have a body that is in charge of, you know, making sure they can speak one of the 2 official languages, and a body that can also see about their basic competency. Because before, you know, 10 years ago, you could become a consultant. You could say, call tomorrow and say, I'm a consultant, and start charging people money. There was no regulation at all. Now there's regulation, but they've only prosecuted a couple cases. So there's no teeth to it. people are still practicing, without any competency whatsoever, in my opinion. So I actually don't think that consultants, generally speaking, are trustworthy. And I would always recommend someone to go to an immigration lawyer, particularly someone who works a lot in the community.
He finished his graduation from famous Queen's University and then attended the Osgoode Hall Law School in Toronto, where he was selected to participate in the intensive program in immigration and refuge law. Mr. Jain also gained admission to the University of Michigan, one among top 10 American law schools, which admits 5% of applicants for its master program.
Well, there are some good programs that are out right now. If you've been studying in Canada at a community college or university, and you've done at least a 2-year program, you can extend your postgraduate work permit for up to 3 years. So that is a wonderful new program. Previously, you had to be outside of the major metropolitan areas to get a maximum of 2 years. Now, if you studied at least 2 years at a community college or university, you can get 3 years open work permit to work wherever you want. So that's a wonderful program.
Mr. Jain is regularly interviewed for his immigration expertise by the media. He consistently appears on television on Canada's most prominent shows.
Ravi, people usually think that you're an Indian by heart and soul, and you can make better decisions for them, and they trust you with all the power you have. Give us a brief on your Indian connection.
Well, my father, like I said, was born in Delhi and immigrated here, did his studies here, and always brought us up. He's a professor, so our sabbaticals, we always went to India. I have gone to India many times. I just went a few years ago with the mayor of Mississauga, Hazel McCallion, who is a wonderful lady. She's probably the oldest mayor in Canada, and she's very charismatic. And I was invited by the Greater Toronto Marketing Alliance, which is a group that wanted to go and sell the Greater Toronto area, sell Toronto and other cities close by to India. And so it was a wonderful invitation, and we went throughout Delhi and Mumbai and other parts, and we basically were selling Canada as a whole and Toronto in particular. So I've been to India many times. It's because I'm mixed background. My father's from India, but my mother's from the States, and I was brought up here and I studied here, and I guess you could say that the level of education and the fact that I graduated at the top of all my programs and has a master's and all that stuff. Most people who have that level of education usually go into, corporate law or some other area of law. I chose to go into immigration law and try to bring a level of professionalism to it that traditionally there isn't in this field. But my mixed background helps me because I'm able to communicate, I think, at a high level, and my writing is obviously, very strong. So I can write well, and I can communicate with officials, and I understand their perspective. Vulnerable people I see are people from South Asia who are very earnest people. They really want to contribute to society. They want to benefit the Canadian public, whether it's people who are cooks or whether it's people who are going to study here or whether it's people who are going to work so hard for the family values in the South Asian community are such that they sacrifice everything for their children. Their children become wonderful students, their parents pay taxes, they work very hard, and they're very vulnerable. And sometimes they get married from someone back home, and the case is refused for no good reason. They also are dealing with other people. Sometimes there's fraud in the community. So my passion is trying to help people who are vulnerable and don't necessarily know how to communicate or navigate the system or communicate with officials. So when an Indian or Pakistani or whatever, Bangladeshi gets landed as an immigrant in Canada, it is the happiest day of their lives. So that's my joy. What I enjoy doing so much is helping people immigrate to the country, whether it's a student or whether it's a permanent resident, whether it's winning an appeal, a spousal appeal.
There have been cases that most lawyers don't keep them updated, and there are callbacks. They keep the people waiting for answers, and people are putting all the trust in them. What's your take on that?
I do have people coming to me saying, look, I went to someone and they really don't seem to know what they're talking about. They don't seem to know the rules. They don't know the changes. Immigration law is very complex. And unfortunately, it should be easier. It should be easy so that someone can just apply for a visa, no problem, and get it. but it is extraordinarily complex. Even though it seems simple for a skilled worker to apply if they meet the points, it's, each area I could talk to you for hours on each little area, whether it's work experience or education or whatever. So, I only practice immigration law. I don't do anything else. And I think that immigration law is the kind of area that it commands attention. If you don't do a lot of it, and if you don't strictly do it, it's very difficult to keep abreast of everything that happens in the field. So I practice everything, all aspects of immigration law, and doing so, I think, allows me to better advise my clients than someone who's just doing a narrow area, or someone like a consultant who just doesn't even understand the basics. Yeah. Ever-changing. It's critical. I mean, I spend a good hour every day just educating myself on all the changes. Honestly, like an hour every day.
So, Ravi, what advice would you like to give our viewers regarding the immigration policies, and they're afraid that they don't fit the criteria? What advice would you like to give them in terms of getting?
Our firm always charges a consultation fee, but I've never had anyone regret paying, a nominal fee to come and get professional advice. And I would encourage them, don't listen to all the rumors out there, whether it's from friends or consultants or whatever. Go see a professional lawyer, sit down and have a meeting with that person, and they will go through the options. And sometimes it looks very bad. Sometimes they think, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to turn my life around. I've done some steps that were wrong, and there's no way I'm going to ever become landed immigrant in Canada. And when you're a professional, oftentimes you can take a situation, you have to ask the right questions to see. Sometimes people claim refugee status, and meanwhile they're highly educated people with wonderful work experience. Or, they're in common law status. Even people in our own community sometimes are living common law, and they don't even realize that you can be sponsored in that way. So there could be many solutions. There are many different types of work permits. There are lots of possibilities. Sometimes someone gets refused and they're told to leave the country, and they come to me and I can get their status restored. If we just do things a little differently, or explain things a little better. Or maybe a manager can be called. There's all kinds of potential solutions. So my advice is to not give up, seek professional advice before you do anything. Even when you think your case is strong and everything's going to go well, I've had so many clients who they have wonderful cases, and they get very mad because their cases are refused and they don't understand why. And if they just presented it in the right way and not volunteered certain things, and then they would be far better off. So take the time, see a professional, and you won't regret it. Yeah. And again, I'm here to serve public. I'm not here to rip them off. I have plenty of business. It's not about that. It's about making people secure and getting them what they want.